The next few hours were filled with tension and uncertainty. The team worked frantically to prepare a reply. They tried to send back a simple message, something neutral and basic. "This is Earth. We've received your signal. Please identify yourself." Sarah could feel the eyes of the team on her, waiting for a response. But when the transmission went through, there was nothing. No immediate reply. She paced back and forth, running through every possibility in her mind. What if the signal was a trap? What if they had just invited an enemy to Earth's doorstep? "Ma'am," one of the engineers called out, snapping Sarah from her thoughts. "We've detected something. The signal, it's changing. It's growing stronger." Everyone in the room fell silent, watching the screens as the signal's strength continued to increase. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the signal stopped. Complete silence. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. What just happened? The quiet was deafening. For a moment, no one moved. The team waited, expecting something, anything, to happen. But nothing did. Then, a chilling thought crossed Sarah's mind. Had they made a mistake by responding? Before she could voice her concerns, the entire control room was plunged into darkness. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Panic spread like wildfire. The backup generators kicked in, but the damage was done. Something had triggered the blackout, and everyone knew that it wasn't just a coincidence. "Get those systems back online," Sarah shouted, trying to keep her composure. Now, as technicians scrambled to restore power, Sarah stood in the middle of the room, her mind racing. She knew this wasn't over. The message had been sent. The signal had been received. And now, they would have to deal with the consequences. What had they just awakened? The answer was coming, and it wasn't going to be pretty. The room hummed with nervous energy as the lights flickered back to life. A low buzz echoed from the computers, filling the tense silence that had settled over the room. Everyone had returned to their stations, but their faces were etched with worry, eyes darting from screen to screen, searching for answers that seemed to remain just out of reach. The silence felt too heavy, too suffocating. The team had just awoken something. But what? Commander Sarah Thompson stood at the center of the room, her mind racing with questions she had no answers to. She glanced at the screen in front of her, where the signal had once pulsed, a steady rhythm that now seemed eerily absent. Her fingers tapped the edge of the desk nervously, but she remained calm, outwardly at least. This was no time for panic. "Keep scanning," she ordered, her voice sharp but controlled. "I want every frequency checked, every possible lead followed." But deep down, Sarah knew something had changed. The atmosphere was thick with an undeniable sense of impending danger. No one in the room spoke it aloud, but they all felt it. This wasn't just a routine military exercise anymore. This was something much bigger. And now, there was no turning back. As the minutes ticked by, the team worked in a near-robotic fashion, each person focused on their tasks, trying to stay busy, trying to avoid thinking about what could be coming. Then, at 4:13 a.m., it happened. A low rumble, barely perceptible at first, vibrated through the walls of the control room. The hum grew louder, more distinct, until it seemed to be shaking the entire base. The air in the room grew thick with tension, and for the first time since the signal was received, Sarah felt her heartbeat quicken. "Report," she barked, but before anyone could respond, the rumble stopped as suddenly as it had started. A chilling silence followed. I don't know, Commander," one of the scientists mumbled, looking around in confusion. "There's nothing on the systems, no readings, no traces of anything unusual. It's like it came from nowhere." Just then, the air changed. The faintest sense of dread crawled up Sarah's spine. The room, once sterile and mechanical, now felt foreign, dangerous, and she could see it in her team's faces. They were all wondering the same thing. What if they had just summoned something they couldn't control? A soft ping echoed across the room. Sarah's eyes snapped toward the screen where one of the technicians was working. The technician's hand trembled as he typed, and the words on his screen flickered to life. "It's back," the technician whispered, his voice tight with fear. "The signal. It's repeating." Sarah moved swiftly to his side, her heart thundering in her chest. The signal had returned, but this time it was different. The pattern was sharper, more distinct. The coordinates, those same coordinates that had led them to the deep reaches of space, were locked in, almost as if they had been waiting for a response. Then came the next bombshell. The fleet had arrived. General Hawk didn't hesitate. They call themselves the Azara, a name no one has ever heard of before. But the signal we decoded, it wasn't just a distress call. It was a beacon meant to guide them here. They have been traveling for centuries, and Earth was never meant to be their destination. But somehow, our signal drew them in. A sick feeling settled in Sarah's stomach. A beacon. The thought of the distress call they had sent out only to draw the Azara here felt like a cruel twist of fate. They had thought they were responding to a cry for help, but instead, they had summoned a destroyer. "How much time do we have?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're looking at less than 48 hours. The fleet will be in Earth's orbit within the next day. We've tried sending them messages, but there's no response. Their ships are silent, but they're definitely not here to discuss terms." Sarah stood up, pacing the room. Her mind raced. What could they do? How could Earth defend itself against something so powerful? She glanced at the team around her. The scientists, the officers, the technicians, they were all looking to her for direction, for answers that she didn't have. "We need a plan. We need to know more about them," she said, her mind working quickly. "Find anything you can on their technology, anything at all. If there's a weakness, we need to exploit it." The room went silent as everyone got to work. But deep down, Sarah knew that their options were limited. Earth's military might was powerful, but it was nothing compared to the Azara's fleet. They were outmatched in every way. Hours passed. The base became a flurry of activity, but no new information came through. The Azara fleet continued its steady march toward Earth, and with each passing moment, the hope that Earth could win this war slipped further away. The feeling of helplessness began to settle in. They were in uncharted territory, and the enemy was beyond anything humanity had ever faced. Then, just as Sarah was about to lose hope, a technician called out, "Commander, you need to see this." Sarah rushed to the station, heart pounding. The technician was staring at the screen in disbelief. Is this real?" he muttered, pointing at the data. Sarah leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat. What the technician was showing her was unbelievable, almost impossible. There on the screen was a set of coordinates, but this time, they weren't from the Azara fleet. They were from another source, a new signal, and it was coming from somewhere on Earth, right in the heart of the planet. "How is that possible?" Sarah asked, stunned. We don't know yet, ma'am," the technician replied. "But it looks like we've picked up another transmission. One that could possibly be from a group trying to fight back. They've sent us something, a clue, maybe, a way to fight the Azara." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Was this a chance? A hope? For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of optimism. "Where's it coming from?" she asked quickly. "Underground, Commander. It's coming from a facility, hidden beneath the surface. We think it might be a weapon, something the Azara wouldn't expect." Sarah's mind raced. Could it be possible that someone on Earth had anticipated an event like this? That there was a hidden weapon, a hidden advantage that could turn the tide of the war? She didn't know, but it was the only lead they had. "Get me a team," Sarah ordered, already moving toward the exit. "We're going to find out what this is. It's our only shot." As she prepared to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that this might be a last-ditch effort. The clock was ticking, and Earth was running out of time. The Azara's fleet was close, and if this was their only chance, She couldn't waste it. The team was already moving out, preparing to leave the base and head to the underground facility that held the mysterious signal. Sarah felt the weight of every decision pressing down on her. If they were wrong about this, it could be the end for Earth. But if they were right, she couldn't allow herself to think about the consequences of failure. There was no time for that. They had to try. As they left the control room, the base fell into an uneasy quiet, the tension growing as the fleet loomed closer. The Azara were waiting, and soon they would have their answer. Would Earth find its salvation in the underground facility, or would the Azara destroy everything? Time would tell. You said. The journey to the underground facility felt like a strange, heavy weight bearing down on Sarah and her team. The anticipation hung thick in the air, each person quietly wondering if this mysterious signal was truly Earth's last hope or just another false lead. The uncertainty gnawed at them, but there was no turning back now. The clock was ticking, and they were racing against time to find something. Anything that could help them against the Azara fleet, which was drawing closer with every passing hour. Sarah glanced around at her team. There were a few familiar faces among them, but mostly they were people she didn't know well, soldiers and technicians brought together in haste. They were all here for one reason: the hope that the hidden transmission, coming from a secret facility deep beneath the Earth's surface, could be the key to survival. As they descended deeper into the facility, the atmosphere grew colder. The walls, made of reinforced concrete and steel, seemed to close in around them. The air was thick with dust, and the quiet hum of machinery echoed through the narrow corridors. The deeper they went, the more it felt like they were heading into the very heart of something ancient, something forgotten. The signal had originated from here, from this buried and hidden place. It was clear that someone had gone to great lengths to keep this facility hidden from the rest of the world. Sarah couldn't help but wonder, who knew about this? Why was it kept a secret? And more importantly, what was it designed for? They reached a large steel door at the end of a long hallway, a door that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. The markings on the door were faded, almost illegible, but Sarah's gut told her this was no ordinary bunker. She stepped forward, her hand hovering over the control panel. There was a slight moment of hesitation before she pressed the button. The door groaned loudly, then slid open with a mechanical hiss. Behind it was a vast, dimly lit room, filled with rows of old, dusty machines and equipment that looked like they had been abandoned long ago. A low buzzing sound hummed from the far end of the room. The air inside smelled musty, like a place forgotten by time. But there was something else too, something that made the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand up. "Commander, look at this," one of the technicians said, pointing toward a large control panel near the far wall. The display flickered to life as soon as they stepped closer, and a map of the Earth appeared on the screen. But it wasn't a map they recognized. This one was covered in strange symbols and markings, ones they had never seen before. This is impossible," Sarah muttered. "What is this?" Before anyone could answer, the map shifted, zooming in on a specific area, a large, empty region deep within the ocean, far from any major city or military base. The signal had originated from here. The technician leaned forward, his face illuminated by the screen. "This location, it's not just random. It's a hidden base. And this map, these symbols, it's as if they were built specifically to communicate with the Azara." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? The facility they were standing in wasn't just a bunker or hidden lab. It was built specifically for this moment. It was designed to face the Azara. As the team continued to explore the room, they uncovered more about the mysterious technology hidden within these walls. There were enormous advanced machinery that seemed far beyond anything humans had ever created, and small, almost unreadable texts that hinted at a long-forgotten history. The deeper they dug, the more it became clear that the people who built this place knew what was coming, and somehow they had prepared for it. "This technology," one of the engineers said, examining one of the machines, It's like nothing we've seen before. It's advanced beyond anything Earth has ever produced. This may have been built by an entirely different civilization, one that had contact with the Azara. The pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't just a defensive facility. It was a weapon, a last-ditch effort designed to turn the tide of an alien invasion. But why was it buried so deep? Why was it hidden? Sarah turned to the map on the screen once again, the markings more distinct now. "There's a network of these facilities," she murmured. "It's not just this one. There are more, scattered across the planet." The realization hit her like a thunderclap. Earth hadn't been left defenseless. A secret group, one that had known about the Azara threat long before anyone else, had built these stations as a safeguard. They had left this message, this map, for the ones who came after them. For Sarah. For humanity. But the more Sarah thought about it, the more questions swirled in her mind. Who had built these stations? And why had they waited so long to activate them? What had kept them hidden for so many years? "Commander," one of the scientists said, breaking her train of thought. "We're decoding something on one of the systems. It's a log. A message." "Put it through," Sarah ordered, stepping toward the screen. The message appeared, and for a long moment, Sarah was frozen, unable to speak. The words that flashed across the screen were chilling. "To the inhabitants of Earth, you are not alone. The Azara are coming. They will destroy your world. This facility has been built to fight them. Use it wisely. Your survival depends on it." There was a long pause before more words appeared. This message was old, too old. "We were once like you. We were once a peaceful race before the Azara came to our world. We fought them, and we lost. Now we offer you the chance to survive, but only if you are prepared to do what we could not." The message cut off abruptly, leaving Sarah standing in stunned silence. The weight of what she was reading settled over her like a dark cloud. The Azara were not just invaders. They were conquerors. And the people who had built this facility, who had left these warnings, had failed in their own battle against them. "We need to find a way to activate the weapon," Sarah said, her voice now filled with resolve. "We don't have much time left. We need to use whatever this is, and we need to use it now." The team sprang into action. They quickly began accessing the systems, working together to uncover the secrets hidden deep within the facility's walls. The hum of machinery grew louder, and Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing in on her. They were humanity's last hope. And now, the only question that remained was whether they could harness the power hidden in these ancient machines before it was too late. But as the systems powered up, a new voice filled the room, coming from the speakers. "Warning. System compromised. Unknown entity detected. Activation sequence aborted." The room went silent. Sarah's heart raced as the cold realization hit her. The Azara were already here. The atmosphere in the underground facility shifted instantly from hope to dread. The hum of machinery that had been steadily powering up abruptly stopped, replaced by a deep, grinding noise coming from the far side of the room. The screen in front of Sarah flickered violently as an alert flashed in red letters. "System compromised. Unauthorized entity detected." Her pulse quickened. "What's happening?" she demanded, her voice sharp with urgency. One of the technicians, eyes wide with disbelief, rushed to the control panel. His fingers flew over the keys, trying desperately to override whatever had just triggered the lockdown. I don't know, Commander. The system is locking us out. Someone, or something, has accessed the mainframe." Another technician, his face pale, turned to Sarah. "The Azara. They must have already hacked into the network remotely. They know we found the facility." Sarah's mind raced. The fleet was already on Earth's doorstep, and now it seemed that their one shot at survival, this hidden weapon, was slipping away before they could even begin to unlock it. Every moment counted. "Can we stop it?" Sarah asked, her voice growing more frantic as the walls around them seemed to close in tighter with each passing second. "We need to find a way to disable the lockdown," the technician replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "If we can't, if they've gained access to this system, they could deactivate everything. The weapon, the defense systems, everything." Sarah didn't have time to waste. She motioned to the team. "Search for a manual override. There has to be a way. There must be something we can do." The team scattered, rushing to different parts of the room, their feet echoing off the cold concrete. Sarah paced anxiously, her mind consumed by the chilling realization that the Azara were already one step ahead. How had they known about this facility? Had they been monitoring Earth for longer than they thought? Or had the distress signal they had sent out somehow alerted them? Either way, it was clear now that they weren't just fighting a war for survival. They were racing against an enemy that had planned this moment long before they had ever even received the signal. A low, mechanical whirring sound filled the room as the central terminal came to life again. The technician who had been working frantically on the control panel looked up, his face drained of color. "Commander, the Azara have gained full control of the system. They've locked us out completely." The word completely echoed through Sarah's mind. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, everything around her felt like it was suffocating her. This was it. The Azara had won. The facility, their last hope, had become a tomb. But then, another voice cut through the panic. "Wait, Commander," a young voice called out from across the room. It was Lieutenant Carlson, one of the newer recruits, but his eyes were sharp and focused. He was pointing at the far corner of the room, where a small, hidden alcove had been uncovered during their search of the facility. "There's something here." Sarah felt a spark of hope flare to life. Without waiting for an answer, she rushed over to Carlson. Her boots echoed on the cold concrete floor, her mind racing. "What is it?" she demanded, her voice barely controlled. Carlson had removed a panel from the wall and was carefully examining something inside. It was a small metallic device with wires and circuits that seemed far older than the rest of the technology they had seen. He turned to Sarah, his face a mix of confusion and excitement. "It looks like some sort of failsafe, a secondary access terminal. It's not connected to the main system." Her breath caught. This could be it, the key to getting control back. "Can you activate it?" Carlson didn't hesitate. He connected his portable terminal to the device and began typing. The device hummed to life, its old lights blinking as it processed the commands. The seconds felt like hours as Sarah watched, her mind racing with the possible consequences of failure. The Azara were already here, and if they couldn't access the weapon or defend the planet soon, it would be over. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Carlson's face lit up with triumph. "It's working, Commander. I've got access. It's a backdoor, an emergency access point. We've bypassed their lockdown." A surge of relief flooded through Sarah. Though she knew they weren't out of danger yet, she nodded sharply. "Good work. Now, get us control of the weapon systems. We need everything we can get." Carlson quickly typed commands into the terminal, bringing up a series of blueprints for the facility. The images on the screen shifted, revealing hidden chambers beneath the main facility, rooms that were clearly built to house powerful weaponry. But there was something else. In the center of the complex, in a heavily reinforced chamber, was something that looked like a massive power core. This is the weapon," Carlson said, his voice filled with awe. "It's a power source unlike anything we've ever seen. It's capable of generating enough energy to destroy an entire fleet." Sarah's heart raced. This was it. This was the weapon they needed to stand a chance against the Azara. "Can we activate it?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the overwhelming pressure. Carlson nodded grimly. "Yes, but we don't know if it will be enough. We'll need to synchronize it with the planetary defense network. It will take time. And the Azara are already in orbit." "We don't have time," Sarah snapped. "Do it. Now." Carlson didn't argue. His fingers moved quickly, accessing the weapon's main control system and linking it to Earth's satellite defense network. Sarah stood over him, watching as the countdown to activation began. A series of warnings flashed across the screen, but he kept going, overriding every obstacle. Then, a voice broke through the tension, a voice that made Sarah's blood run cold. "You cannot stop us." The voice came through the speakers, sharp and cold, and Sarah froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It was the Azara. They had gained access to the facility's communication systems, and now they were speaking directly to them. "Commander Thompson, this is your last warning. Your world is ours. Surrender, and we may spare you. Resist, and we will destroy you." Sarah's mind raced as the words echoed in her head. There was no surrender, no negotiation. Earth would not go down without a fight. She turned to Carlson, her eyes filled with determination. "Activate the weapon. Now, we will not surrender." As the last confirmation was entered, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The power core came to life, its energy surging as the weapon began to charge. The hum of the machinery grew louder, more intense, until it felt like the entire facility was vibrating with the force of it. Sarah turned back to the screen, watching as the weapon powered up, and the first blast of energy shot upward, directly toward the Azara fleet. The countdown had begun. The war was on. The Azara had no idea what they were about to face. The world held its breath as the weapon charged, its power building with every passing second. Sarah Thompson stood in front of the main control terminal, eyes glued to the screen. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Every single person in the underground facility knew that this moment would determine the fate of Earth. The Azara had warned them. They had threatened to destroy Earth, to claim it as their own. But now, for the first time, Earth had a weapon that could fight back. They weren't just going to sit idly by and wait for the inevitable. They had a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. The blast of energy that had already been fired into space had created a ripple in the atmosphere. The weapon wasn't just powerful, it was something far more than they had expected. It wasn't simply an energy source, it was a weapon of unimaginable scale. The Azara fleet, hovering in orbit above Earth, was about to feel the full force of it. As Sarah stood there, her mind raced through every possible outcome. They were outgunned. The Azara's fleet had advanced weaponry, superior tactics and technology that was decades, or even centuries, beyond anything humanity had ever seen. But Earth had one thing the Azara didn't: determination. The will to survive. The human spirit. "Commander," Carlson's voice broke through her thoughts. His hands were flying over the console, desperately trying to stabilize the power surges coming from the weapon. "We're losing control of the energy flow. It's too much power for the system to handle. If we don't stabilize it, we'll lose everything." Sarah's stomach dropped. They couldn't afford to fail now. She stepped forward, eyes scanning the displays. "We don't have the luxury of time. Can you reroute power to the stabilization core?" Carlson nodded quickly, fingers tapping the controls. "I'll try, but it's going to be a risk. If the core isn't properly aligned, the weapon could backfire." A deep rumble echoed through the facility. Sarah turned sharply, her heart pounding. The ground shook, and the walls seemed to tremble in response to the rising power. The Azara were already launching their counterattack. "Incoming," one of the technicians shouted. Missiles from the fleet, approaching fast. The room erupted into chaos as soldiers scrambled to prepare for impact. Sarah's eyes went to the massive screen displaying live images of the Azara fleet in orbit. They were launching massive energy projectiles, far larger than anything Earth had ever encountered. The explosions from those missiles would wipe out cities in seconds. How much longer? Sarah shouted, her voice barely heard over the noise in the room. Carlson's face was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead. "I'm aligning the core now, Commander. We don't have more than a few seconds before their strike hits us." A tense silence followed. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was it. They were on the edge of either victory or annihilation. Every action they took in the next few seconds could change everything. The weapon hummed louder, the resonance vibrating through the room, and for a brief moment, Sarah thought she could hear it, a heartbeat of Earth itself, a pulse of life, of resistance, ready to strike back. "Done," Carlson yelled, slamming his hand down on the control panel. The screen in front of them blinked, and the countdown timer started again. This time, it wasn't for the weapon to charge, it was for it to fire. With a deep, resonating roar, the weapon fired again, this time with a blast that illuminated the sky above, visible even from the distant reaches of space. The surge of energy rocketed toward the Azara fleet, its trajectory locking onto the massive ships in orbit. The incoming Azara missiles were now seconds away from impact. Sarah didn't wait for the results of the weapon's fire. She turned to the communication console and barked into the mic. "All Earth Defense Forces, engage now. Full assault. We are not letting Earth fall today." A series of transmissions confirmed that military forces around the globe had received the signal. The world had united in the face of this threat. Ships that had been lying dormant for months were now powered up, firing on the Azara fleet with everything they had. Anti-air and orbital missile systems locked onto the incoming projectiles, their warheads cutting through the sky, intercepting the Azara's strikes. The first wave of the Azara fleet's missiles exploded in midair, their power dissipating as Earth's defense systems overwhelmed them. But more were coming, faster than the human forces could react. The Azara were relentless, their ships unleashing wave after wave of projectiles. But Earth's weapon was far more powerful than anything they had imagined. As the energy beam shot into space, it pierced through the middle of the Azara fleet, cutting through several ships in a single strike. A shockwave rippled out from the impact, sending smaller ships spiraling off course as their systems short-circuited from the blast. The Azara ships that remained in orbit retaliated with full force, but they couldn't keep up with the magnitude of Earth's weapon. It was as if their attacks had no effect on the weapon's defenses. The tide was shifting. Earth's survival was no longer just a fleeting hope, it was a reality. Still, the Azara weren't retreating. They had one more trick up their sleeve. Their flagship, a colossal ship that dwarfed any Earth-made vessel, began to charge a massive energy cannon, its power unlike anything Sarah had ever seen before. She felt her stomach lurch. If that beam hit Earth, it would wipe out entire continents. "Commander, we can't stop that ship in time," one of the officers cried, pointing to the flashing display. Sarah's mind raced. The energy from the Azara flagship was building up, a blinding light forming in its cannon. They had moments, maybe seconds, to prevent the strike. But there was a chance, just one, that she could use the weapon to stop it. "Redirect the power," Sarah barked. "Focus it all on that flagship." Carlson hesitated. "Commander, that's—" "There's no choice," Sarah shouted, her voice commanding. "We have to end this now." Carlson's fingers flew over the controls again, his eyes flicking to the targeting system. The weapon's core hummed louder, its energy surging again, and then the beam fired once more, a concentrated blast aimed directly at the Azara flagship. For a brief moment, time seemed to stretch. The beam traveled through space with incredible speed, and just as the Azara flagship released its own energy beam, the two collided. The resulting explosion shook the facility. The impact reverberated through Earth's atmosphere, visible even from the surface. For a moment, everything went silent. Then Sarah saw it on the screen. The Azara flagship had been obliterated. The remaining ships in the fleet hesitated, their coordination faltering. They had just lost their command center. Panic seemed to spread through their ranks as Earth's forces pressed the attack, finishing what had been started. As the Azara ships began to retreat, Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. The battle was far from over, but Earth had won the first fight. The world had stood up against an enemy it couldn't possibly have prepared for, and it had survived. In the aftermath of the conflict, as the dust began to settle, Sarah looked out over the facility. Earth had survived, but the battle was only the beginning. There was much left to do, much to rebuild, and much to learn about the Azara and their true purpose. But for now, humanity had fought back, and that was something worth fighting for. "Commander, the fleet is retreating," Carlson reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "We did it." Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. "For now. But we'll be ready for them, if they ever return." And with that, the fight for Earth was far from over, but humanity had proven one undeniable truth. They would never give up. The victory was hard-earned, but it felt like an impossible dream come true. The Azara fleet, once poised to obliterate Earth, had turned tail and retreated into the cold, unforgiving expanse of space. The weapon, Earth's final hope, had done the impossible, obliterating the Azara flagship in a single decisive blow. For a moment, it seemed like the world could breathe again, but that peace was fragile. The battle was far from over. The days after the assault were filled with a mix of relief and tension. Earth's defenses had held up, barely, but the planet had endured a wound so deep that it would take time to heal. The technology they had uncovered in the underground facility, the weapon that had saved them, was more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered, but it was a relic from a past long lost. There were no easy answers. Sarah Thompson, commander of the operation that had changed Earth's fate, stood in the command center of the facility, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of Earth. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Azara had retreated, but the question remained, why had they attacked in the first place? Earth was an isolated planet, not one they could have seen as a significant threat. But the Azara's fleet had been massive, their weapons devastating. Something about this encounter felt personal, and Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to this war than they knew. "Commander, we've received a transmission from the United Earth Council," Lieutenant Carlson reported, his voice tense. Sarah turned from the map, meeting his eyes. "Put it through." The hologram flickered, and the image of Council Chairperson Lucas Carrington appeared before her. His face was grave, his posture straight as always. Despite his stoic appearance, Sarah could see the wariness behind his eyes, the weight of the decisions that had to be made. "Commander Thompson," Carrington said, his voice steady, "you and your team have done the impossible. Earth owes you and your people a debt that can never be repaid. But as much as we are grateful, we are also deeply concerned." Sarah's stomach tightened. She had expected praise, maybe even relief, but not this. "Concerned? Why?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "The Azara are retreating, but not defeated," Carrington replied. "We've detected a signal in deep space. It's faint, but it's there. We believe they've activated a secondary fleet, one hidden somewhere beyond the reach of Earth's current defenses." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Another fleet. How could they have hidden it? The Azara's ships were enormous. There was no way they could have gone unnoticed by Earth's surveillance networks. "Secondary fleet," Carlson echoed. "Where?" "We don't know yet," Carrington continued. "But we're working on triangulating the signal. If we're right, we have a matter of weeks, maybe even days, before they launch their next assault." Sarah's mind raced. The Azara had just retreated, but now they were preparing to strike again, stronger than before. Earth's weapon had proven effective, but it was not enough to stop a full-scale invasion. What had they missed? What did the Azara have that they didn't? "The facility," Sarah said suddenly, her eyes narrowing as the realization dawned on her. "The weapon we just used. It was a last-ditch effort. We activated it, but we only scratched the surface of its capabilities. What if the Azara weren't just interested in Earth as a target? What if they were after this weapon, this technology? What if they've been monitoring us, waiting for the moment we would find it?" Carrington's eyes widened, a flicker of realization passing through his gaze. "You may be right, Commander. That facility, and the weapon hidden within it was far too advanced for a simple defense. The Azara might have known about it long before you discovered it. The real question now is, why did they let you access it? Sarah didn't have the answer. She only knew that if the Azara wanted the weapon, they would stop at nothing to get it, and they had just launched a new fleet to do so. "Commander," Carlson interjected, "what if there's more to the underground network of facilities? What if this was only one of many, scattered across the planet, waiting for the right moment to activate?" Sarah turned to him, her mind working quickly. "That's a possibility. If the Azara knew about this place, they might have known about others. But that's not all. We need to find out more about them, who built these facilities, why they were hidden, and what they were designed to do. We can't fight an enemy like this without understanding the weapon we're dealing with." Carrington nodded slowly. "Then it's settled. I'll dispatch teams to search the planet for more facilities. Your team will need to continue investigating the current one. We'll also need to prepare a global defense network in case the Azara launch another attack. We have no idea how many ships they have hidden in deep space." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Understood. We'll get to work immediately." As Carrington's hologram flickered off, Sarah's mind raced with the new information. The Azara had retreated, but only temporarily. The war was far from over, and now it was clear that the fate of Earth would depend not only on their ability to defend the planet, but on their understanding of the Azara's true intentions. The weapon, the hidden facilities, it was all connected. But how? She turned to her team, who were gathered around the control panel, ready to move forward. Carlson, still exhausted from the earlier battle, gave her a nod of determination. "What do we do now, Commander?" he asked. "We dig deeper," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "We find the answers. The Azara may have been stopped for now, but the next phase of this war is just beginning. And this time, we're going to be ready for them." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the gravity of what was to come. Earth's survival didn't just depend on defeating the Azara. It depended on understanding why they were here, what they wanted, and how to use the ancient technologies they had just uncovered to their advantage. This war wasn't just about weapons, it was about knowledge. Sarah took a deep breath. The fight for Earth was far from over. But this time, they were no longer fighting blindly. They had a weapon, and they had a chance. Now it was time to use it. She looked up at the stars through the facility's massive viewport, her eyes narrowing as she steeled herself for the battles yet to come. The Azara had made their move, but so had humanity. And the fight was only beginning. "Prepare yourselves," she murmured to the team. "This is just the beginning."